Eleanor Terrett. I am the host of the Crypto in America podcast and newsletter, and I'm joined today to talk about policy, my favorite topic, with Kristin Smith from the Solana Policy Institute. She's the president there, and Greg Xethalis from Multicoin Capital. He's the general counsel, or I think as Bernie Moreno likes to say, Greg Xethalis.
Xethalis.
Yeah. I want to jump into it because we do have limited amount of time. Kristin, I want to start with you. You've been at SPI now for about 4 months.
Yes.
You were at BA before. I think we're all very familiar with BA. I'm curious to know why Solana ecosystem needed a specialized group to advocate for it in Washington, and kind of what are the priorities that the community members were looking for from you guys when you started the Institute a couple months ago?
Yeah, no, thanks for that question, Eleanor. Happy to be back up here this afternoon. So yeah, Blockchain Association is some of the best work I've ever done. I was the first employee and helped get it off the ground. And 7 years ago when that started, there were maybe 10 people in Washington thinking about these issues. And as the industry's gotten more sophisticated, we've got more and more people coming in, and everyone really united last year as a team to push back and to change sort of the fate of crypto with the elections. And so I think as we headed into this year, the folks in the Solana community realized that a lot of other parts of the ecosystem had a presence and they did not, and they wanted to sort of equalize that. But I think also, and we can get into this more, each part of crypto has slightly different interests. It doesn't mean those are conflicting interests, but different priorities. And for the Solana ecosystem right now, a lot of what people are doing and building in that space is about bringing new assets on chain, internet capital markets. And so we're doing the regulatory piece as well as engaging opportunistically in other opportunities that come our way.
And then just to follow up, what kind of voices do the Solana ecosystem bring specifically to the crypto policy conversation in Washington that might be different to, say, a BA or a digital chamber?
I think they could get more specific. There are so many teams building in the Solana ecosystem, thousands of them, and so we have a program where we help bring them to Washington and allow some of the smaller voices that don't have the ability to have their own team on the ground or maybe even participate in a trade association to have their voices heard.
Got it. Greg, Multicoin has done a lot of initiatives actually in partnership with SPI in the last couple of months. What would you say is the most impactful project that you guys have worked on?
We've worked on a lot,
Yeah.
both with SPI as well as portfolio companies in our portfolio who happen to be on Solana and some who are not on Solana. I think the most gratifying part starts with the fact that we can go in, whether it's to legislators or most importantly to the crypto task force. And I know SPI has been in a lot. We've been in with a variety of our portfolios. We're working a lot on ETPs. We're working a lot on liquid staking. We've been on decentralized oracles and a whole variety of different projects. I think where we're going to see the most progress and the most excitement and the thing that can't be priced in from a sort of more meta perspective is Project Crypto generally. Earlier today we saw Chair Atkins talk about it a little bit. I think, Kristin, I don't recall if were you there for
I
Chair
was
Atkins?
not in the room. No.
Miller was there for Chair Atkins' speech, as was I 2 weeks ago, and I think it was the most transformative thing said about crypto, possibly since we're 17 years ago this Halloween, the Bitcoin white paper was written. Fast forward another 5-6 years and the Ethereum yellow paper was written. And it's not clear to me that either of those were more impactful than what Chair Atkins said 2 weeks ago. So I think Project Open, which SPI has been working very hard on, is all about internet capital markets, bringing things on chain. And what we heard from Chair Atkins was a direction from the most powerful financial regulator on the globe, saying, I am directing the full force of Union Station to alter our laws through amendment, through exemption, to allow any financial service that wants to go on chain to go on chain. And when he spoke this morning, he talked a little bit about ETFs, and my background was in ETFs. And he talked about the struggle to get it through back when they were first launching. And the traditional ETFs are mutual funds. They've got to comply with something called Rule 22C3, or Section 22C3, which requires that shares trade at NAV. And with ETFs, they modified the structure, relying on economic incentives around arbitrage to fulfill the statutory goal and the policy goals. And my hope is that is the type of spirit that we see manifested in Project Crypto and this mad dash we have over the next 3 years and hopefully many more years to make this all a reality, because this is what everyone in this industry and everyone in this room has been building for the last 16 years since crypto was first born.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to quickly echo what Greg said. The Project Crypto speech is hugely important, and if you have not watched it, please go watch it. You can read it, but I liked watching it. I think for those in crypto, you'll sit back and like be blown away, and for those from the traditional financial world, it lets you know what's coming, and I think it's going to happen in a blink of an eye.
I'm glad you mentioned, we'll come back to crypto ETFs, but the internet capital markets, it's a major focus for the Solana ecosystem specifically. It's a big ask though, right? We've obviously heard Chair Atkins talk about bringing all financial markets on chain. We're seeing a little bit of it with the Genius Act passing. We're getting stable coins, a new payment infrastructure. So that's sort of the first steps, if you will. But beyond that, I mean, what are the major milestones, Kristin, that you're watching that would signal that we're taking those next steps? What are you watching for that, would say, okay, that's step 2?
Yeah, well, I think we need some either no action letters or exemptive relief or guidance from the SEC on how to bring some of these markets on chain. I mean, I think when we think of internet capital markets, we're thinking of any sort of asset where there's a marketplace. We want to bring that on chain. SEC, its equities, its debt, it's bringing that piece of it on chain. And, we do need some nod. I think with internet capital markets, there are a couple concepts that are different than regular markets, like one of those being self-custody. We want to have that option, and that option is really important for participating in DeFi, because if you can have one place that represent all of your assets as an individual or as a business, you'll be able to do so much more with those. And I think it ultimately could be incredibly revolutionary, bringing a lot new businesses, giving new opportunities to individuals. But in the meantime, we're looking at these small steps where we're getting regulatory guidance. I mean, I think it would be a victory to get a chair to the CFTC in place so that we can start this on the derivative side as well. So we're looking at those small things. I think it's definitely a long-term vision. And when I'm working with policymakers in Washington, I've tried it. I've learned the hard way. You can't go promise what the world's going to be like in 25 years and be taken seriously. You really have to look at those incremental steps along the way, and that's that's the approach we're taking at SPI.
Would you say market structure is an essential step for this to happen?
I think market structure is very important to get right. It's really interesting because when Gary Gensler was attacking the industry, market structure legislation was a solution to the litigation going on. I think where we're at today is there are a couple pieces that we really absolutely need Congress to do, but with the SEC we have today and with Project Crypto that Chair Atkins laid forth and the, the crypto sprint of the CFTC, yep. I may have misnamed that. There's actually a lot the regulators can do, and so from my perspective, we want to get it done. We want to get it done during the Trump administration, but we also want to get it done right. And so I'm really pleased by the progress that Congress has made. And these bills are not easy to get done. They take a long time to get right. And so I really appreciate all the time and attention Congress has been putting into it.
And I think an important point that shouldn't be lost is both Genius and market structure principally regulates the centralized intermediaries in crypto. And what we really want to see is, in the final version of market structure, solid defense of developers and DeFi and the world that is not intermediated. And then the facilitation of true internet capital markets, not simply of crypto commodities, but instead of tokenized securities, tokenized debt, tokenized equity, tokenized derivatives. Those types of relationships will require the SEC and the CFTC to modify their rules, create exemptions, create sandboxes, and allow the world to experiment under the assumption that if we're removing intermediaries, the risks change. It's not that there aren't risks. There clearly are smart contract risks, and we don't want a buyer beware world, but we want the freedom to innovate because this is a technology that can improve the world, improve efficiency, and remove counterparty risks, which fundamentally are the focus of the existing financial services regulation, because they were the principal problem that the financial services laws sought to address. So I do think there's a lot the SEC can do on the internet capital markets side on its own, and regardless of legislation, it's going to have to do a lot of it on its own.
So it's more about getting the bill right, in the meantime, getting the SEC and the CFTC to create safe harbors and kind of a, in the meantime, setup. So we can kind of get going on it.
Yeah, and hopefully tee up Congress to validate and codify some of the work that the agencies are doing.
Yeah, I mean, you both were working on, the Genius bill from, your respective organizations, putting in recommendations, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask you kind of what you think about the current market structure situation. Obviously, we have a couple weeks left of August recess, and then Congress will come back, the Senate specifically will come back to tackle their discussion draft, the Senate Banking Committee. Curious, and Greg, I'll start with you. What do you think the House bill and the Senate discussion draft does right? What is critical to be included in the final bill, in your opinion? And where do they miss the mark, and what do they do well?
So I think both efforts are the result of staffers who've been working on this with a labor of love for 5 to 7 years. And I think clarity drew a little bit from Fit 21, which was a different world, where legislation had to be more prescriptive because you had to defang sort of an unruly regulator who went awry. They've modified it a little, and I think what we've seen in the Senate side, I think the bulk of market structure legislation will likely match. What we've seen in the Senate side is trying to drill down for a clear, bright line, this ancillary assets concept, focusing on the relationship between an asset and the party who originated it. And is this an issuer-style relationship, and should the securities laws apply? And also, over the last 3-4 years, we've seen a transition of understanding that it is not typically the asset that is the security in crypto. It is the transaction around it. And so that has changed and modified. I am optimistic that we can get there, but we're going to have to get there pretty darn quick because there's not a whole lot of time, and counting to 60 in the House is not as easy as counting to passage in the counting to 60 in the Senate is not as easy as getting there in the House.
Okay. When market structure bill?
When market structure bill? I hope this Congress. I think 2025 is potential, but not necessarily guaranteed. I would say, though, the wild card in all of this is President Donald Trump. When he decides he wants something, he tends to have ways of making that happen on incredible timelines, and he has said that this is a priority. So if it weren't for him, I would say the laws of politics and the laws of legislative timing are going to slow this down. But when Trump steps in and says he wants to get it done, and he's got good allies in the Senate and the House to make it happen, I think amazing things can get across the finish line. And
I think the other component is there's a unified desire, not just among the Republican parties in the White House, the House and the Senate, but also among a majority, or at least a plurality of the Democrats, to bring this industry here and make America competitive. And to do that, we need reasonable regulation, or as Chair Atkins said, the minimum effective dose of regulation to meet our policy goals. And I know we're running over time, but I just do want to give a shout out to John Darcy for an amazing job putting this conference together.
Wait, Greg, I want to ask you one more thing, because I really wanted to ask you it. What is, just really quick, give us an overview of this generic listing standard for crypto ETFs, and when could we see a Solana ETF?
Generic listing standards, they are likely coming about a month away. The basic rule is if you want to launch a fund, the principal component of which is a digital asset or any type of commodity that has had a contract listed on a CFTC regulated designated contract market, you can launch now without the 19B4 rule proposal from the exchange. So it'll allow you just to take a registration statement and go live without this 240-day dance with the Division of Trading and Markets. I expect it to go live within the next 6 weeks, and that would open up the window, which starts on September 16th and ends on October 10th for a Solana ETF launch, and likely an XRP launch a month or two after, just because they haven't been on a DCM for quite as long. So it's a really big moment for crypto. I started in the crypto industry 12.5 years ago on Bitcoin ETFs, and somehow I came right back. Life's a great
Full circle.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.